My best friend had COVID. They would not allow her to go to the hospital, so she dealt with COVID at home. She has had issues with her hearing. She has issues with memory. She has issues with cognition, being able to focus and stay on task. And this is a year and a half later.
I found myself presenting and just going blank, and it was I just panicked.
Going to the dentist one day, a dentist we've gone to for 40-some years, only 2 or 3 turns, and when I started the ignition, I realized I couldn't remember how to get there.
I could no longer do basic math. I couldn't add basic numbers.
At nighttime, I couldn't talk very well. I would stutter. I couldn't move my hands and talk at the same time.
I've heard people talk about having brain fog, but I didn't have just brain fog. I was afraid that I was losing it.
It was like there was a huge wall in my head that I could not get around to access words or thoughts.
I was fast forwarding to what it might be like to be a grandmother and thinking, oh my gosh, if I'm, 56 years old and this is what's happening in my brain, how am I going to possibly engage with my grandchildren?
My husband and I were talking about selling our house. I couldn't get out of bed. There was no way that we thought I would be able to go back to work.
After COVID, I physically recovered, but part of me is missing. I'm looking for what's missing.
People are struggling. They don't understand why. There's not a whole lot of information out here that says if you had COVID and you're experiencing this, these things are related, and more importantly, this is what you can do to address it.
And then I got the scientific reports. Number 1, if you've ever been infected by COVID, even if it didn't make you sick, your brain ages by 7 years. There was a measurement that the cerebral cortex shrank, equivalent to 7 years if they just were infected. Number 2, if you had COVID and you did become ill and you had brain fog, your brain ages by 20 years.
So the brain is able to heal itself, to fix itself, to return itself to a state of homeostasis. When it's out of balance, it can put itself back in balance. All it has to do is be able to see that it is out of balance.
By my 3rd treatment, I was jumping out of bed in the morning, making my bed, opening the blinds, running around. I had more energy than I had pre-COVID.
That was part of my disability, was to go to speech therapy as well. And it was the same thing. I was in tears that day. And then on Monday, I started Cereset. And on Wednesday, my husband said, do you know you haven't stuttered since you've been doing this? And so then I tried moving my hands, and I could do it and talk at the same time.
By the end of the treatment, I felt stronger, more alert, and better driving home than I did going there. And I've been able to handle a very, very busy day-to-day running simulation lab for all my students. And I'm running it, I'm talking the whole day, something a year ago I couldn't have done.
What science knows now is that there are 54 different symptoms that have appeared, magically appeared after COVID. And we've had the opportunity to look at many people and have them as clients before COVID. And then they got COVID, were infected, and then they came back as clients after COVID, with long COVID. And then we could see the before and after very clearly. From all this information over the last year and a half, we've developed a anti-COVID sort of cognitive enhancement protocol.
And Cereset, again, it's not anything that we're doing to your brain, we are simply allowing your brain to see itself through sound and optimize.
When the pattern is played back to my brain can notice where it's in sync and where it's not. And so by listening to the pattern that's been registered from the technology, my brain is slowly resetting itself.
The reason we do 4 sessions in a row is your brain needs to be reminded at first, because we're actually creating some new neural pathways for your brain, better ones, stronger ones. And it takes 3 weeks for them to become fully mature.
And it's all happening through the use of music notes. So it's quite wonderful, actually.
And I went back to physical therapy the next week, and they said, well, how are you? I said, you're not going to believe it. I'm completely cured. And they were like, no way. And so they had this wobble board. They put me on a wobble board with a balance pad, and I'm throwing a ball up against the trampoline and catching it. Stand on one foot. And they were like quickly got to their computers, and they were looking up Cereset afterwards.
And I found out I was 400% differentiated in one area of my brain. And that first session took that down to about 50%, and that next session took it down to about 12%, and I'm back.
I was just offered a very large national role at a new bank because my brain is sharp again. It gave me my life back.
I went to the long COVID unit in Chapel Hill and spent way more money up there than I ever have spent with Cereset. And didn't get any, hardly any answers up there.
Sadly, I think our society puts a lot of emphasis on what we can see, but just because we can't see what's happening in the brain doesn't mean that we should neglect it. And unless we invest in our own brain health, nobody's going to do it for us. So I think it's definitely an investment that's worth it in the long run.
We've had incredible successes with it all over the world, but it would have never probably come out that quickly, at least, if it wouldn't have been for COVID.
There is help. You can get help, and it is possible to feel like yourself again.
You can not only be you again, you can be a better version of you. There should be a billboard in every city.
That's what Cereset does. It gives the brain an opportunity to see itself functioning, to recognize that something's not right and then fix itself. That's the power of Cereset.